like doubling up the work. You're just doing them together.
Some of them that way. And then I've got some instructors who learned, they did really well on the Zoom and they enjoy it. So I've got a little place set up for them to do if it's not at the exact same time.
Okay, cool.
A little hybrid of that.
Yeah, you know, the thing that I think everybody needs to kind of get a handle on too is we don't know if this is going to go in like a cycle. I mean, it could be that I was out Memorial Day weekend in Sedona, Arizona. Amanda, didn't we drive up? Oh, no, we didn't drive up there. We drove up to my school. It was just a drive up to the school right when you came out. But that's a ways up, and nobody wore masks. Like it was like normal Memorial Day up there. Nobody was wearing masks. People were just ignoring stuff. And you know, there may be a big spike in a couple weeks of coronavirus cases, and who knows if that'll start making the government want to shut things down more. Not to panic anybody on the call, but we don't know if there's going to be like some kind of other requirement, or we don't know how things are going to go. And as far as like how your students operate and run your business, if you just have your regular class schedule, as Master Oliver kind of has said all along, and run that schedule, and then have it available on Zoom, online and offline, then no matter what the flow is, you're able to handle whatever the flow is. You know, and then your students that want to stay home can stay home. The students that want to come to class can stay in class. And you don't have a lot of stress either way, other than making sure that everything's safe and compliant with whatever's going on. You know, I'm not saying you should change what you're doing. I think what you're doing is great. But as we move on through this, if there's an uptick in the fall or there's something else, what I guess is just encourage everybody to do stuff that doesn't require us to keep changing our system during those times.
Right.
Is just a thought. So the less we can do to change, then it makes it more stable for the students, and they know they can do the classes on Zoom, they can do the classes in person. They have these are the different options they can have. But that's great. I mean, I'm glad you guys are opening. That I think it's always going to be easier to talk to somebody in person. Although we've had such great success with, I mean, I don't know if Rachel's on the call here, but we've had such great success with people doing renewals, you know, almost to a better closing rate on renewals using Zoom. In fact, Master Oliver, I think we could probably safely say the closing rate was better on Zoom, not just almost as good, but better on Zoom than it was before they had done it in person. Maybe because people are more focused. I think some, but sorry, did you have something else to add, Amanda? Yeah, percentage-wise, the closing rate for Rachel was higher on Zoom. Yeah. So there's opportunities there that I think people are discovering.
Yeah. The people that
absolutely.
Those numbers,
Amanda, did you have something else to add there?
No, sir.
Okay, but that is great. You're kicking butt and have a lot of leads.
I'm looking forward to a renewal blitz in June.
Absolutely. Now it looks like my internet connection is unstable. Great, but
you seem okay.
You're back, I think.
Yeah, we'll see. I saw that Ron did 10,000 cash yesterday. I'm not sure what day this post was, but 10,000 cash for renewals and 4 new enrollments at the new rate. So let's give him a pat on the back. I haven't seen him on the meeting here yet today, but good work, Ron, on getting your prices up where they should be. And you know, 10,000 cash in today's environment is a wonderful thing. In any environment, it's a wonderful thing. Amanda, you were kind enough to volunteer after being volunteered to do a special session for all of our members. And the part of the rationale, I'll freely admit, is you know, sometimes it seems like we have some subset of our membership base that I say it 9,822 times, and for some reason they don't hear it. And then Master Moody says it 8,000 times, and Master Smith says it 12,000 times, and for some reason it doesn't ring true. So we recruited you to do a special session next Wednesday at 10 Mountain, noon Eastern on the same link, which is all about enrollments, doing enrollment conferences and marketing during the shutdown stuff, right? And now into the gradual reopening for those who are into gradual reopening. So everybody put that on your calendar. It's a special separate session. And, you know, if Master Smith or myself or Master Moody show up, we're going to shut up. And Amanda, through whatever support tools she would like to have, is going to run it and tell you exactly what she's done. And Amanda, how many enrollments have you done for May so far?
For May, we have had 12 enrollments, which is about 16 people, 16 new members.
Okay. And where did you finish April?
We finished April at 30 enrollments. Some of those were family memberships.
Yeah.
So
And
April was all virtual.
yeah. Yeah, that was 100%. And then May, you've been gradually being able to reopen.
Yeah, so we've had about 2 in-person enrollments. The rest have been all still on Zoom.
There you go. There you go. And I think everybody's going to be doing them on Zoom as well for quite a long period of time. But Amanda, you've been very, very good at getting out there and generating free media. Obviously, you're putting budget into Facebook, which is pulling well for you, and you've been doing a lot of stuff in your area to generate awareness and traffic. So, you know, sharing for everybody next Wednesday is probably useful as well. But for some reason, there's still a number of people who have a mental block about presenting price or doing intros or one thing or another on Zoom. And I'm hoping that maybe through hearing some other voices rather than ours, maybe it'll finally sink in. But I appreciate that. The other who volunteered after I volunteered them is Rachel and probably Jan from down in Florida, just outside of Jacksonville. And they, among others, have led the way on doing renewals in a 100% virtual environment, and have done a really good job of keeping up their normal renewal rate and normal renewal progress and everything. So next Friday, Wednesday, by the way, is June 3rd, 10 a.m. Mountain, noon Eastern, this same meeting link. And then next Friday with Rachel and Jan is going to be June 5th, again, 10 a.m. Mountain, noon Eastern on this same link. And it's 100% no commentary from us. You're going to hear directly from a couple of members who have been very successful. You know, for whatever reason, a bunch of the women have been leading the way here. So Olga is the other one. I haven't seen Olga on our meeting here, but she really led the way as well on renewals. And Amanda, you've been leading the charge on virtual enrollment. So good for you for just not taking any obstacles for obstacles and keeping a clear mindset about things.
We're looking for opportunities out of the obstacles too. I mean, Master Oliver, it might be relevant to just for a second share what Paul shared. He's not on the call today, but he was on a call with a bunch of other school owners in his same area that have similar backgrounds as him, and they're all, 60, 70% down, and he's pretty much doing the same amount of business, and yet he said he was $10,000 paid in full in his 2 schools. And what's the difference? And his conclusion was that he showed leadership and that he's been kind of doing what we told him to do. Maybe you guys could expand on that from the call today. Amanda got to hear him as well. But it's, how much of it is between our ears. It's between our ears. It's not what the environment is. He's in the same environment as the other guys that can't grasp that he's doing well. They just couldn't believe it. And I think he said he had the staff from the other schools emailing him and texting him saying, we're just not getting guidance. So it's not to give anybody a hard time here, but just understand, if you're not having the success that we're talking about, it's not the environment. It's not other stuff. Because we keep hearing that a lot of times.
And
Now my internet connection.
And you know,
Go ahead,
the
sir.
thing that you're
Yeah.
saying is, the thing that you're saying is so true, Master Moody, is because what Master Oliver had been telling everybody, if you remember back at the end of last year, he was saying that these are the best economic times we've ever had. And this is the time that you guys got to make sure that you have your Parthenon of marketing, because not all of these avenues are always available. So you got to have some depth to your marketing. And that's basically what, you know, actually happened to the letter, is that our normal big home runs that everybody was getting on the live marketing, all of a sudden our wheels got cut out from under us on those. And now we've shifted gears on the marketing. And even though people were doing all those before, it's where we had to make that the home run. And that's exactly what Amanda did. And I thought, Jimmy Grasser, I thought you started this pandemic off really well too. You might say a couple things. And I don't know if it was just because you got your people engaged, or if was it your renewals or your enrollments, but I remember you were doing really good when we started. Master
Well,
Grasser.
we started off really well, and yes, we started off really well, and we started Zoom immediately. We retained, I would say, 90% of the people that were current members. We did some renewals just on Saturday. We did a paid in full, which was our first one. But we are having a little bit of trouble contacting the people that are coming in from the Facebook ad. So we started a Facebook ad. We're doing a bucket list per day. We've had a total, I think, of 43 leads come in, but we've only been able to contact about 7% of them. So the people that we do contact, we are making appointments and putting them through the process. We've got an appointment today, but it's a little bit slower than I would have expected. You know, a lot of the leads that are coming in are either they can't be contacted, their phony phone numbers, or they just don't respond. So we are having a little bit of a slow time with that. We're planning on doing our first black belt test. We're going to do a private test. We're going to go ahead and open up for just the immediate family members, and it's a small black belt test, only 11 people, but we're planning on opening up pretty soon. And so the people who feel comfortable opening up, coming to the school, we're going to let them go ahead and come into the school bit by bit. I haven't formulated the exact way we're going to do it, but we're going to be small classes until people feel comfortable. People who don't feel comfortable, that have any concerns, they're just going to have to stay on the Zoom meetings until they do feel comfortable. But yeah, so we are having a little bit of a trouble with the contacting the people that are coming in. We've got Lead Owl engaged in that, so the Lead Owl is supposed to contact me immediately, but for some reason it's not showing up until 20 minutes later, or even 24 hours later. So I don't know if my settings are wrong or what this situation is, but we're still rolling. We're still moving on, and we're chugging forward. So I also have somebody on the meeting. I have somebody else on the meeting that I
Amanda, can you give we've got a strange connection. Go ahead and introduce your guest, Joe.
I lost you, Master Oliver.
Oh, okay.
We
There's a
only
little
caught
bit of a hiccup or a
bit of
pause
what
there.
you
I didn't.
said.
Okay.
Yeah, if I'm back,
So I was
Jimmy,
going
introduce
to,
your guest.
We haven't
Well, it is really
Go
freaky
ahead,
today.
Jimmy.
Okay, so one of my guests, I don't know if you had any questions, but my friend Gene was on here, and he's been handling some of the the leads that are coming in. And I don't know if he wanted to introduce himself, but he's been working with me for quite some time. And he's helping me with contacting the people as they come in as we teach the classes and things like that. So, Gene, are you on the video today?
Yes, I'm here.
Anyway.
Thank you for
Okay.
allowing me to be part of the meeting. I've been helping Master Gracer, with the, the implementation of the online platform with Zoom, and also being able to help with the leads that come in through Facebook, and then following up with the contact information that comes in, the inquiries. And what I found is that out of the people that we're able to connect, we're able to translate into intros, into leads and eventual signups. But out of the 43 or so that Master Gracer was discussing, we haven't been able to actually speak to anyone or have anyone return our emails, our texts, or our calls. As with the percentage that we're looking for, in the Facebook ads that we've been giving. So I'd like to just kind of ask, anyone, the people who are doing this, what their success rate is on the Facebook leads and converting those Facebook leads into actual people that you're speaking to or people that are calling back.
Well, let's start with, if I'm back, I don't know. Amanda, why don't you give them your experience on early on with Facebook? We had many conversations about having trouble with the conversions, and then you very quickly fixed the appointment ratio, and then you fixed the intro ratio, then you fixed the conversion into enrollment. And if I remember correctly, first month or so, all of your staff was saying, oh, these are flaky leads, and it's not getting us anywhere. But from Facebook primarily, you enrolled almost 30 people last month. So can you give them some immediate thoughts on ways you tweaked your system and ways that you converted that to enrollment flow? I know that Jeff Patterson has done a pretty good job on here on Facebook leads, a number of other probably as well. But Amanda, maybe you can give them some feedback on that to begin with.
I think that, at first you have all of these leads and you make appointments, and then you end up having some no-shows, quite a bit of no-shows, and you get a little discouraged by that. But then you start continually working on follow-up and staying connected, and the people that come in, try to keep my staff on that positive upswing, and me as well, that focus on the people who do show up. And then after you've had some time and you can really go back and look at the ratios, you see that it really is good, and it's worth it. At first you feel, because you do get a lot of no returns or no shows on your intros. But when you look back and you see how many yeses you did get and how many enrollments you actually did get, to get those 30 enrollments, we had to go through, that was a 50% close rate on enrollment conferences, not even intros. So from the leads to the intros, through the first class to the enrollment conference, 60 enrollment conferences, 30 enrollments. That's a whole lot of back people to that. And if you can kind of focus, not focus on the ones who are saying no, but focus on the ones who are saying yes, when you look back, you're going to see that it really is worth it. But I think that just sticking to your plan and being personable, and just keep connecting.
Amanda, I have a question for you. So we've been contacting the people through. First, we call them back on the phone number. We also text them. We also send them a small video so they can have some idea of what our school looks like. Then we email them. So we're trying all those avenues. And so when let's say no one answers the phone. So when you leave them a voice message, what does that sound like? If that's going to be the first the thing that they hear, what does your voice message sound like?
Well, when they actually have a voicemail box that isn't full,
right,
or open, it's thank you so much for checking us out. We're looking forward to that. The same thing you put in the text, the same thing you put in the email. It's and you just keep doing it and don't give up just because they said no. Then they go into your lead file and they still get hit constantly. You know, don't give up after 3, 4, 6, 8, 20 times. Just keep doing it. That consistency is what's going to pay off. It's not really a magic word or a magic phrase. It's just consistently reaching out and letting them know that you're available.
And I have a question to that. How many leads are you getting per month from Facebook?
Well, through Elite Digital this month, for the month of May, we've had 66 leads so far, and we've had 12 enrollments from that. So pretty good ratio there as to how we first started.
And how much are you investing per month?
Well, hang on a second. Amanda, what is your lead to appointment conversion ratio?
Lead to appointment?
Yeah.
I'll give you a good estimate. I'm sorry I don't have that prepared today, but it's a lead to appointment is not as good as some of you guys are doing. It's about 40%, 50%.
Okay. So
It's about that lead, 50% to appointment. You know, we have a pretty good show rate, 80% show rate, and then from there.
okay. So that's the real issue that they're having is the real issue is they're getting lead traffic, quite a bit of lead traffic, but having difficulty going from the lead comes in to getting the appointment set. Is that a fair thing to say? So
Or even
yeah.
being able to contact them in any way. We're not getting any, well, I wouldn't say any, but it's low. So we call the phone number, we text, we email, we contact every method possible. And then we still, either it's a bad phone number or
I didn't hear you mention direct mail.
direct mail. We have not done direct mail.
Yeah, so you're not using every method possible. So let's yeah.
I think you hit on the first thing though earlier is that you're having a problem getting your lead out set up so that you're not getting the lead for 20 minutes. And you got to get that fixed, I think, because what we know is if you don't contact them within the first 30 seconds, your appointment rates go down 90%. So if the lead's coming in and you're not hitting that, and Gene, I guess, is doing the follow-up here, if you're not getting back to them, or essentially while they're still looking at the landing page, while they're still thinking about you, then your appointment rates plummet, and that's kind of what you're experiencing. So that's the number one thing on any internet marketing is the attention span for what your offer is going to be shorter than 20 years ago when they had a coupon and they dug it out of the mail and they called you. It's different. So I think that's the first thing to really attack and figure out how to get that time span shortened. And that's a technical issue you got to deal with. So that's the first thing I'd attack, in addition to what Master Oliver's saying. You definitely want to use direct mail as well, and that's pretty easy to incorporate. Does that make sense?
Well, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you. I think we're in an interesting place right now. I think part of our people are also they're wanting. They put their information into the Facebook ads, but also California is just about to open back up, and we're
Jimmy, don't even go there. Everybody is in a really different, weird spot, trying to figure out what's happening, what comes next, where the state is, and again. I'm paying attention to it in Colorado. It's hard as hell to figure out what they're allowing to open, what's not. Half the time I'm assuming things are closed when they're open, or assuming they're closed when they're not open. That's not your problem. So don't let yourself have the excuse of because the next excuse will be, well, the state's been open for a month, but a bunch of people don't want to come out yet, and all of that. So don't let that be the excuse. What you've got to resolve is making sure you're getting the lead immediately, that there's immediate outbound follow-up, And then that you overlay a massive sequence of direct mail, outbound calls, text messages, and emails to warm up, educated, and keep warm the leads that are generated, right? And what we see over and over and over again, and this is true of first time somebody does a booth in a movie theater, it's true of the first time somebody goes out to a big July 4th festival, and it's been true every time with no exception. Facebook is with a new lead source is a flood of leads come in and all of a sudden pissed away because the systems aren't being handled very well. And then the immediate reaction for many is, oh, those are crappy leads. That's a crappy source, but that's not it, right? If I had my druthers, by the way, any day of the week, you know, I would sit back and I would do sequential direct mail and newspaper ads, and I would wait for the phone to ring, and I would only deal with leads who had picked up the phone and called me. And in fact, I'd even be happier if I only dealt with intros who had like forced their way into the school because their next door neighbor told them how great, right? So there's certainly a spectrum of the level of interest that they start with when they first raise their hand, right? But don't let yourself get into the excuse of, one, that California is different, that we're in a halfway point and there's a transition. Well, no, it's the same excuse that people used 2 months ago that, well, you know, nobody wants to do Zoom. Well, lots of people wanted to do Zoom. But the next excuse is going to be that people are scared to come out and do group activities. Well, that's going to be true as well, right? Some people are going to be scared to do group activities. Some are excited to do group activities. Most of them, my argument is, they're going to be cautious about it and looking for organizations and people who are being safe and sensitive to, aware of, and skittish of those who are unsafe. But Jimmy, what you've got to do though is we've got to make sure you're getting the lead right away by text to whoever's going to follow it up. We've got to make sure that it's going into the software right away. Then you've got to make sure that you incorporate direct mail going out regularly to your entire database of leads. You're inviting them to online events. You're inviting them to live events in the school once those are able to start again, but that you're consistently mailing to them and you're immediately following up with them. The thing about online, and I don't care whether it's pay-per-click, whether it's Google search engine, whether it's Facebook, anything else, some portion of them are flaky, right? Meaning some portion of them put in a bad phone number, some portion of them are living in Pakistan, some portion of them, you know, are just screwing around online and filling out every form they see. That's just the nature of the beast, right? And I don't care what industry you're in. I've done a lot of work with the franchise industry, and you know, I think they have a closing rate that's like 1 in 1,000, and they're tickled to death with 1 in 1,000. But the, you know, standard joke is, you know, oh, that lead was filled out by the family dog, and that one was filled out by the, you know, by the 9-year-old. Well, all that happens, but what you have to recognize is consistently over and over right now, we're getting enrollments for anywhere from $100 to $500 a piece. So getting break-even enrollments at the day they enrolled, positive cash flow. Amanda, do you have a sense of how much you spent per enrollment last month? I know we didn't plan on putting you
Master
on the
Oliver,
spot
let
with
me,
your
before
numbers,
we
but
go. Although there's one thing I did want to mention. So I'm looking at the Lead Owl information that I'm getting in right now. I don't even have an address. There's no one has even filled out anywhere where I can send them the direct mail anyway. So it's just email, phone number, and things like that. So we've done what we could with the information.
yeah, we would want to coordinate and start collecting address as well.
Can I add something though, Master Oliver? I think that the error that people are having here, it's a huge error. to make an assumption that people, I keep hearing, well, yeah, but this is happening in my town. We don't know how the marketing response is going to be. We don't know what the best offer is. We don't know what, you got to try lots of things. One of the reasons Amanda is doing really well is I've talked to her about her marketing. She's still running AdWords. She's still running a lot of social media other than Facebook. She's doing a lot of public things in her marketing. She's podcasting. She's doing a lot of other things. She's following what Master Oliver's talked to you guys about in terms of the Parthenon. There's a lot of other stuff going on, and she's consistently done that. And if you haven't done that consistently, then you got to start doing that. It's not too late. But all of those things are happening, especially now, because making the statement, and Jimmy, you just did this, but a lot of people are making the same kind of statements in your head. Oh, this is happening with my clientele, so therefore they're going to respond this way. We have no idea at all how people are going to respond. We don't know at all how your clients are going to respond. You guys don't know. If you get a bunch of people calling and saying, we can't wait to come back into your school when you open up, you don't know if that's really going to happen. Just because they said that, you don't know if they're going to have a flood back of people. Amanda's opening up. She just told us earlier. I don't know if that means 10% of people are going to come back, or 50% are going to come back, or 90% are going to come back. You don't know how people are going to respond. The biggest error we have now is we don't know how people are going to respond to your marketing or all the internal things you're doing. So you've got to do enough stuff. It's very consistent with what we've been talking about. You've got to do enough marketing, and there's got to be enough going on, and people will respond to all the different pieces that you're doing. Plus, they all work interactively. So I think the error is, and we can't get caught up in, oh, this is happening in my town, so therefore I'm going to do X, Y, Z. No, you got to do everything depending, because there's going to be all kinds of different reactions. That's the error. And everybody that says, yeah, but in California it's this, or in Canada it's this, or in New York it's this, or something, you guys have all got all the spectrum of reactions that's going to be the same everywhere. So you've got to do enough stuff. You got to have enough stuff and be reaching out to pretty much everybody that might have all kinds of different responses. So the error is thinking people are going to respond a certain way. They're going to respond a bunch of different ways. So deal with all of that, and don't prejudge what people are doing. That prejudgment is what's getting us in trouble.
Yeah, well, okay, so Amanda, what additional ideas or thoughts would you give them on why you're getting 40 to 50% conversion rate to appointment?
Well, besides what we've just said, follow up, consistent follow up. And it is the Parthenon. They'll see it on Facebook, and then, then they'll see it again here, and then they'll hear it on the radio, and then they'll do, so it's all, every way I can possibly get in front of them, I try to get in front of them. And just don't change your, whatever process you had, your closing process, your intro process, your sales process, don't change it, and just from a sales, point of view is, don't go into attached, because then if you go in with any type of fear or trepidation, or is this really going to work? That's just going to feed that person, even through a camera, through your expression. It's got to be just you telling them what you love and what you love about martial arts and how it's going to benefit them. Because at the end of the day, all they care about is how can you help them. And if you spend all your time telling them how listening to them, what is it that you are hoping to gain from this, and letting them know that you're going to be able to provide that for them. People aren't providing that for people right now. Gymnastic studios, they're done. Kids got nothing. I hear every day, thank you for doing this. Thank you for staying on top of it. So you have something that's so valuable. You just got to believe that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Jimmy, we can come back to it. You've got to tune and tweak your initial system, and you've got to do more follow-up on educating lead prospects. And we certainly want to make sure that you start collecting um, mailing addresses as well. One of the things, by the way, for everybody's understanding is Matt, I think, has been doing about, what was it, Amanda? 70 to 80% from lead to appointment. But what he is doing, and we've been kind of testing this back and forth, is they're landing them on a schedule once, I think, scheduling page that says here, schedule, go ahead and let's schedule your first time for your first lesson right there on the landing page. And again, he's having, I think it's almost 80%, between 70 and 80% that are completing the form and scheduling the appointment. Now, that's not an end all and be all, because if you have them schedule their own appointment and you don't personally, where it falls apart next is on the conversion to intro. So you still have to reach out, you have to educate them, and you have to communicate with them. But that is one of the things that seems to be working pretty well, is going from the lead page and having that land on an appointment scheduler where they schedule the appointment right there. The other thing, of course, we've done from time to time a lot is paid intro versus free intro. And doing a paid intro online is going to be more solid as well. Generally, we've had less success. And Amanda, you may remember when you were doing the paid intros, generally have had less success getting them to pay the intro online than to have the offer be a paid intro. And then when we talk to them on the phone or when they actually show up, having them pay for the intro. And so that's not necessarily a panacea for what you're talking about in any way, shape, or form. Is that a fair thing to say, Amanda, from your experience?
It is. The paid intro, we didn't have near as much traffic. And there wasn't a better show rate to the intro. You know, even if they paid, you know, it was like 3 classes for $19.99 or something, and it didn't, all it did was lower our lead volume. And so we just went back to the 2 weeks free. And that worked. And I think earlier you'd asked me about leads, and for the leads that we had in April, we spent, cost us about $80 per enrollment.
Yeah, dirt cheap.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if, you know, I'd love to have gotten all of them, you know, but still 30 enrollments, it only cost me $80 for each one. The volume and the amount of work that we did, you know, is certainly worth it.
Yeah. Well, and at the very least, if you're doing let's say 400 plus the first month, and at the end of that initial deposit and the first month tuition, if you were at zero, if it cost you all of that up front, I'd still be tickled to death, right? So, but $80 per enrollment, I mean, that's just you know, you just keep throwing money at that and throwing money at that until, and that's, I mean, really the way that big direct response marketers do it is if they're getting a lead cost that's low, they keep it, which will eventually drive the cost per lead up, but it'll also drive the number of leads up. So that's just the standard. But let's shift gears here. Bob, you're here somewhere. You had 3 or 4 questions that were stacked up in the queue for us to talk about before we run out of time on other things. The first thing Master Smith and I had promised was to go through that stat sheet. Bob, can you pull that up and share the screen whenever you're ready? Let me know and we'll go through that. And it comes back to what we're talking about here. For every lead source, for every enrollment source, you always want to keep track of where they came from, how many leads, if it's something where you're generating leads, let's say it's, you know, filling out a form online, or they're filling out a little lead slip at a movie theater, or anything in between. But you want to know how many leads you have, or how many calls you have is a different source, what your conversion rate is to appointment, what that appointment conversion rate is to intro, what that intro conversion rate is to second intro if you're doing a 2-step enrollment process, and then what the conversion rate is from second intro to enrollment, and ultimately what the ratio is from lead to enrollment, from appointment to enrollment, from intro to enrollment. As you get more sophisticated with this, that helps you tune and tweak. I'll tell you what, Master Moody, myself, Master Smith was always looking at with multiple schools is, I would have program directors who said, yeah, we only got 20 info calls, but we made 20 appointments. Well, I always knew that they were lying, right? What it meant was there were 4, 5, 8, 10 more calls that they didn't record. And, it was either, sometimes somebody calls and just says, hey, how much are your lessons? And then if you don't answer it immediately, they hang up on you. Well, that's still an info call, right? I want everything recorded. Or we would look at, we have 30 first intros, but we only have 15 second intros. Well, that means either the relationship build and the quality of the first intro wasn't very good the first time. And usually if you have decent instructors, kind of the last thing I worry about is that if it's a family with a child, kind of the last thing I worry about is the child had a lot of fun and the family thought it was useful. Usually my first inclination is they were going at them too hot and too aggressive on pricing and numbers and stuff like that, and scaring people away before they were in the right mode, right? But as you go through those numbers, from a staff development standpoint, you start to know, here's probably what's happening, and here's how we're going to tune and tweak it as you go through that. And again, the big part of the value here is being able to benchmark across the board. And what you're always looking to do is who's doing the best and how do I match what they're doing on each number and on each piece, right? When I did this type of environment, going back 30 years with EFC, with, that group of people, I was effective in it because I could leave every meeting being pissed off about somebody was doing better at something and being on the mission. Now, it does you no good if you show up and you're doing everything better, 9 out of 10 things better, and you want to go gloat about how good you are. No. What you got to do is find the one thing, the two things, the three, you drop the ball, right? So Amanda, I've given you plenty of praise for massively taking action on April enrollments, but we know where you dropped the ball is you didn't do renewals, right? And we got to do enrollments and renewals all the time. So you show up to say, oh, wow, look what Rachel and Jan, look at what Olga, look at, everybody who are kicking ass on renewals. Oh yeah, we probably should focus on that too. That's where you have the takeaway, is watching what somebody else is doing better than you and using that as the key. Bob, did you find that stat sheet?
Yes, sir, I did. I was just going to bring up first the member site just to point out where everybody can find it. So on the quickstartmember.com, if you come over underneath the toolbox, we have stat sheet. So let me stop that because I got to open it up.
And amazingly, there we have something that's actually labeled with great clarity for a change.
And here's the stat sheet. Did it pop up, the spreadsheet?
You're good. You're good. Go.
Okay.
Scroll down a little bit so we go to the top first.
That is the top.
Yeah. There. Okay. You're good. So let's talk about interpreting this. And as you get more sophisticated, you can start subsetting these. Total leads from Facebook, total leads from live events, total leads from total inbound phone calls, subsetting inbound phone calls by where the source was. Of course, total walk-ins, separating the walk-ins by, they were a referral or they just saw the sign while they were shopping or whatever it might be. So the more sophisticated you get, the more you'll be able to divide out. But, let's start with the most basic separation is intro traffic that came to you versus intro traffic you chased down, right? So standing in a movie theater at, Black Widow, if it had come out this week, and generating traffic there, you're going to have a lot flakier ratios than if if the phone rings and you say, how'd you find out about us? Well, Mrs. Jones next door, her son Billy is one of your students, and I came down to his birthday party, then I came down to his, and you've been mailing to me 12 things a month for 2 years, and we finally decided we're going to enroll, right? So that example, if you don't have almost 100% conversion on that, you could put an ATM on the wall and do a good job on that. On the other side, they're going to be, maybe 80% make appointment or better, but then maybe 50% show up, 50% enroll. You're going to have that 50% drop off between appointment to show rate and then show rate to enrollment. So where I think a lot of people get bogged down is they want to look for the perfect software system or the perfect, way for the computer to keep track of this. I really don't care if it's one of those big Post-it notes that stick on the wall, that you're using a magic marker and you're writing down the numbers every day to keep track of it. It doesn't have to be in software. This is an Excel spreadsheet, but just some way that you're keeping track of it and paying attention.
Yeah,
And
this can even be on a clipboard and do it manually and then go back and put it in the computer later.
And probably should be done that way to begin with.
We have one by every phone, just like this, and then at the end of the night, our program director will put them all into the computer.
Yeah, and here's where it falls apart. First place it falls apart is you decide you're going to keep your stats every week, and on Saturday you try to figure out what happened. Well, no, it's got to be at the end of the night, nobody leaves before we reconcile and put it in one source so we know what happened, right? I can tell you from many years experience, if you close out the night on Monday and you try to figure out what happened on Tuesday, that's best guess. That's not real numbers, right? You want to make sure nobody finishes the day without you go through. How many leads did we generate? How many, from what sources? How many of those did we contact and make appointments for, and so forth, right? Now, on a day-by-day basis, you might have 20 leads and 2 appointments, but then on Tuesday, you might have 3 leads, but 10 appointments, right? Day by day, it's not going to make sense. Cumulatively for a week, it'll make more sense. Cumulatively for a month, it'll make more sense. Cumulatively for a quarter, it'll make more sense and be more relevant. So you're always looking at, where are we at week to date? Where are we at month to date? Where are we at quarter to date? Where are we at year to date? And looking at those numbers over a broader spectrum, right? And just as Jimmy, as you're experiencing, as soon as you first did a live event, it's going to take some while to tune and tweak. As soon as you do Facebook, it's going to take a little bit to tune and tweak, right? But
Matt, I would just add, every professional business does their numbers at the end of the day.
Yeah.
There's not one that doesn't. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's a big manufacturing company, they know at the end of the day what their numbers are. If it's a small shop that's been around for a while and is successful, every successful business is going to do their numbers at the end of the day. Nobody gets to leave without doing them. So I just want to back up what you said. Everybody should really hear that. There never, ever is a time where you do it the next day.
Yeah. Well, and like I spent a lot of time in Starbucks, and I mean, that's multi-billion-dollar company, and they've got massive software packages and all that stuff. But I can tell you, I've many a times watched the branch manager with a big notebook that's got one of those plastic bound covers, sitting down and going through all of the end of day numbers and writing them out by hand and looking at the numbers and making sure it makes sense, right? The problem with computers a lot of times is the numbers go in the computer and human beings don't look at them. And I've got to tell you, it's fallen out of favor, but it shouldn't have. When I was doing programming in college, GIGO was the #1 thing. GIGO stands for garbage in, garbage out. You want to make sure that in real time, you're ticking it off and you're doing hash marks and then one thing or another, but you're just keeping track of it as you go. And you're looking at it and your staff is looking at it at the end of the day to make sure nothing fell through the cracks and being brutally honest, right? So the phone rang and they asked a question, that's still a lead. Somebody put in, a bad phone number on a Facebook lead. That's still a lead, right? So you go through it. So as we're keeping this every day, we want to look at leads to appointments, inquiries to appointments. Inquiries is differentiated on this form as that's an inbound call or a walk-in, where leads would be Facebook leads, web forms filled out. It would be somebody filled out the lead at a movie theater. Those are more ones that we chase down rather than they approached us by phone or they approached us by by walking.
Mr. Oliver, the importance of these, keeping these stats and keep making sure they're accurate. When you said I would keep a printed copy to mark on a daily basis, we keep the whole month on a clipboard, and then this is week 1, and that's what we're working off. That way, there's nobody who takes an info call or somebody walks in that they're going to then go to the computer and then put a tick mark in. But if the paper's there, it's right by the phone. They do it right while they're talking on the phone. So it's so critical that you have these printed out, write on them on a daily basis, because this is going to determine the success of your school. Because all of these stats, if they're accurate, then you know exactly why you're not getting the enrollments that you want. Because you can look right down the line here and see where the fall off is. And then you can go back and check those systems to fine tune them.
Yeah, yeah. So, but again, so going through here, at each step, we're looking at what our appointment, our ratio is, and this will obviously calculate it for you automatically. But what our leads to appointment set are, what our inquiries to appointment set are, and then we're looking at first in is the same as, that's just a duplicate field as appointment set, right? So the first intro scheduled is the combination of appointment set and appointment set. But really what we want is first intro show or completed, and then we want second intro show or completed, same language, right? So, you know, tell you the
And
truth,
let me clarify that for you, Master Oliver, where it says total leads and inquiries and total appointments. The reason we did that is because we wanted to know what the whole ball of wax was. And the reason we had the 2 before that is so we could see independently where most of them were coming from, because we knew percentage-wise that one was a better ratio than the other. But still, for the month, we want to know what our total leads are, what our total appointments are, what our total. So that's why we had that line where they work together.
yeah.
And then you get down to your first intros right after that. But
Sure.
you do want to have those totals together, so you can, that way you can say, well, we had 150 leads, but, and I look back and I say 125 of those were from, you know, live events and Facebook, and the other 25 were from walk-ins and calls. Well, we know those percentages should be higher, but then overall, what are we averaging out with all of the information that we're getting in from leads and walk-ins and calls?
Right. So, but going on through here, I would rephrase, frankly, first class scheduled as second intro scheduled. And if you wanted to be more accurate on this, you could take total leads, appointments, first intro, second intro enrollment from leads, and then you could do inquiries, appointments, first intro, second intro, enrollments from that pipeline, and that would be an enhancement. Again, this is a simple form, but what we want to do is we want to know of the appointments we scheduled, how many of them actually showed up, right? And what I will see on that is, again, in an evaluating staff mode, the guy who says, or gal who says they have the highest closing rate appointment from call oftentimes also has a low show rate from appointment to intro. And in the communication, that can mean they're just pushing so hard to tell them to, get them to give a time, that they're not really building relationship, asking questions, getting enough of a relationship built on the phone that person feels comfortable about showing up, right? So again, if you see a high closing rate to appointment, but a low show rate, that means that the call is not being handled well, and the level of relationship, rapport, et cetera, is not being handled well. So moving on down, Bob, let's go to that second sheet. Okay, so now we have.
I got too far?
Yeah, you're fine.
Master Oliver, just to clarify for you, Bob, go up just a little bit more. Okay, where you see first intro where it's doubled, it's actually saying that actually that next one should be the second class scheduled and a second class shown.
Right.
That's
That's what
the only problem.
right. I would rephrase that as second intro.
Yeah, that's what that
Yeah.
should be. That should be their second class that you scheduled, and how many of those finished that, how many actually came.
Right, right. And frankly, I'm not so much concerned about keeping first, second intro scheduled, because I'm going to assume 100% got scheduled. Now,
And the reason we did that is because a lot of people, we found that they did something wrong in the first intro and they didn't come back for the second intro. And then they had an intro to enrollment was way off when we found out that they had a good closing ratio. It's just that they didn't have many show up for the second. So that's why we really wanted to know how many did come for the second.
yeah, but
And
that's
if there's
not
a good percentage of them, then that means that you got to do a better job on that first intro and getting them back.
right, which is non-responsive to what I just said. What I just said is I would assume that everybody who took the first intro scheduled a second intro. And we have found occasionally with staff program directors or with owners, that's the problem, is they kind of let them come in and take an intro. And then, especially in the virtual world, we've seen this. They're chasing people down to schedule the follow-up enrollment rather than at the first contact scheduling those appointments so that they're pre-scheduled. So usually there should be, nobody takes an intro without being scheduled for their next time. And if you're doing a virtual first and then putting them into a group class virtually, you should already have a third session scheduled already. That is going to be the time that you work with them a little privately, but mostly you're going to do the evaluation and the enrollment. But I've seen a number of our members whose closing ratios are pretty bad because they let them come into a virtual group class, but then they're trying to chase them down by telephone to schedule the next session. That just is not the way to do it. Anyway, moving down here a little bit. Go ahead, Bob. Go back where we were. Let's talk about renewals. And again, this one could be
Did
expanded.
you hit enrollments there? I thought you kind of skipped over that.
Right, enrollment conferences, enrollments. So, and really what we want.
That's important to know how many conferences you had, so you know how good a closing ratio you have. And so that way we find out whether it's what you say in the enrollment conference, or was it you just didn't get enough to come back for that second class?
Or whether they came back for the second class, you never sat down with them and did an enrollment conference.
Exactly.
Right. So yeah, we're going from second intro, first class scheduled, first class completed, to how many of them had an enrollment conference, how many enrolled. And again, you want to be enrolling them first lesson or second lesson. With kids, I prefer second lesson. Occasionally it extends to third, but if it extends much beyond that, usually you're not going to get them enrolled. Then the thing that I would add here, if it were me, and you might not do this every day, but I don't just want to know how many renewal conferences we have. I want to know how many renewal prospects we have at every belt level at all times, right? So I want to always know, here's how many white belts we have that are just on our trial enrollment. Here's how many gold belts we have that are just on our trial enrollment. Here's how many orange belts, whatever your belt rank is. But here's how many orange belts that are just trial enrollment. Here are how many green belts and up that are just trial enrollment. And just knowing that tells you if you are or not doing a good job on renewals. Because if you have a bunch of them that are at your third belt or up that are not renewed, that means you're doing a crappy job without knowing any of this other stuff, right? Where a number of our members got squirrely with this is they said, well, I did 10 renewal conferences and 9 of them renewed. We're doing great at renewals. Well, the unknown number was they had 40 people who could be renewed, only talked to 10 of them and renewed 9. Well, that means that we're doing less than a quarter of the people who should be renewed, not that we have a 90% close ratio on renewals. That particular thing is more or less irrelevant if you don't have the bigger context of how many people should be renewed, and then how many actually conference, then how many you renew. Is this making sense so far? And
that's the problem that we have a lot. We ask people, well, how many people in your school are in leadership? And they'll say 90%, but that's not really a relevant number.
No.
It's how many people were in the basic program, and then how many people out of that number did they get into leadership. If a whole bunch of them dropped out of the basic program, then their renewal rate was crappy.
yeah, for instance, of Amanda's 30 enrollments last month, what we want to know by next month is how many of them renewed, right? So if she did 30 enrollments and renewed 25, that's great. If she did 30 enrollments and only renewed 5 of them, that's problematic. So you've got to know what the base is to work with there. Scroll down a little bit more, Bob. We've got to wrap on this pretty quickly, but let's scroll down a little bit more. This active student count, 1 week, 2 week, 3 week inactive, that really is a weekly number. That's not so much a daily number. What you can keep track of daily is you can have, let's say, just a class schedule and know each day how many attended each class. You can know how many attended each day. You can keep a week to week to know if, Monday normally is 142 attendees, and this Monday we only had 72. I mean, that points out problematic. But as far as this active count here, what I would want to know is how many total people attended this week, not attendances. In other words, if one person came 3 times, that only counts as one person, right? How many total people attended class at least once this week? And then how many came to class last week, didn't come to class this week, came to class 2 weeks ago, didn't come to class last week and this week? How many came to class 3 weeks ago, didn't come to class the previous 2 weeks or this week? And then that's your 1 week inactive, 2 week inactive, 3 week inactive. What I always knew by looking at it is if the 3 week inactive ever got to 1% or greater, I had a real problem. Well, there's 4.2 weeks in a month. Therefore, at 1% or even close to 1%, that means I have a 4% dropout rate. I want a less than 2% dropout rate. At 2 week, I always knew I didn't want that over 2%. And we're going to assume that I'm going to get most of them back in, right? 1 week inactive, that tends to be all over the board. July 4th week, a holiday week, whatever, it might be high. Generally, we never want that to be, again, the lower the better on each of these numbers. But across multiples, I always knew we had a crisis brewing if 2 week was more than 2% and 1 week was more than 1%. So that's the way I always paid attention to that. Absent calls, that's kind of a weird number. What I want to know is that I got hold of everyone who hasn't been in yet this week, who's been gone 1 week, been gone 2 weeks, been gone 3 weeks, right? So if I have 40 people in that line and I made 40 absence calls, that's a nonsensical number. I just don't care about that. What I do care about is if I have 40 people to contact that I started at the top of the list and I worked my way to the bottom of the list. Now, what do I do next? Go back to the top of the list, work my way to the bottom of the list. What do I do next? I work my way to the top of the list. I work my way down. Really what I want to know is of the inactive students, what percentage have we contacted and what percentage do I have an appointment for them to be back in, right? Those are the relevant numbers. And again, a lot of times staff will break their arm patting themselves on the back due to activity. Doesn't matter how many calls they made, it matters how many people they got hold of. And again, as Master Moody says over and over and over again, they do an outbound call, they leave a voicemail, they text them, and then they email them. And the routine should be, when I'm working my way through the list, that's what I'm doing with every one of them. Going down, we got to wrap on this quickly, but now we got to start getting into cash numbers. So you're not going to keep track of automatic payments. That's your billing. You're not going to keep track of that every day. Really, what I'd prefer you to do is have everybody billed on the first. The money comes in, you pay the bills, you're done. So we're not going to pay attention to that every day. Again, this is somebody else did this spreadsheet, but to give you an idea, we do want to look at in-house payments every day, and you can separate if you want between tuition and retail. For me, I could care less about retail. If you wanted to, you can, separate belt fees and seminars and all that stuff. Really, the only number I truly care about is tuition. So that's going to be what I'd like to subset it down is how much we did payments on enrollments, how much we did in down payments on renewals, and how much we did on paid in fulls, right? I'd like to know separately those three numbers as my total of the in-house tuition. If you probably should keep track of how much of it was retail, how much of it was other miscellaneous stuff. But really what I want to know is tuition. And the tuition, I want to separate that out between down payments or paid in full enrollments, down payments or paid in full renewals. Is this all making sense for everybody so far? Any questions about that? No? Okay, Bob, you can stop sharing that. And then Bob, before we get too backed up on time, there were 3 or 4 other questions that were coming into the Facebook group that we wanted to talk about today. Bob, you had 2 of them that you were wanting to make sure we addressed here.
Yes, sir. Hanato, you're on here, right? Yeah. He had a couple of questions. I just wanted to make sure that it got answered. Can you unmute yourself? Or let me see if I can unmute you, Hanato.
And I tagged him in a bunch of the bandit signs posts that we had that will come up on his Facebook
There you go,
page.
sir. Yep.
But he might have been, Renato, were you?
Oh, wait. Okay, Hanato, what were your questions?
My question was recommendation for bandit signs, size and a place actually to order.
Supplier?
Yeah.
One of the things to always do is go to the search field in the Facebook group and go to the search field in the member site, and they both work pretty well. Just so you know, to the best of my knowledge, Facebook hasn't yet corrected the search field pulling up files. So oftentimes you can also go look in the files and you'll find all kinds of stuff in there. But for instance, if you search bandit signs, you'll come up with suppliers and artwork examples, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then if you go over to the member site, there's a thing on the right corner for printing. We have a supplier who set up where you can do print on demand through them, but also there's just a ton of artwork in there, and anything that's in there you can have full access to. Usually you can just download it right there on the site. You can have full access to.
Those are the ones I tagged him in.
Okay.
Yeah, you can have full access to it as an editable download that you can do anything you want with, right?
That's that print on demand section, Hanato, when we did the walkthrough. If you need me to point you back at it, let me know. And I realize you're new, and he's just getting familiar with the Facebook group, Mr. Oliver. So, but anyways, but here's the place to air it all out. So if anything gets missed, you guys please chime in.
If you go back to our Facebook page, I did post a bunch of them on there, so you'll see a bunch of them.
Yeah, but you got some examples, for stuff that's going to be, and I don't care if it's a billboard, a quote unquote bandit sign, whatever, people call them, a banner on the building. Those are things that people see sometimes while they're driving by at 60 miles an hour, right? Other times, maybe they're stopped at a stoplight or something. And if they're driving by 60 miles an hour, it's probably not going to do you much good anyway, which is why at a parking lot exit or a intersection is more likely to work. And if you're in a big metro area, stapling posters on telephone poles and stuff don't work. In Manhattan, they do the concert posters and glue them to the brick wall or whatever. All that kind of stuff works a little bit. It doesn't work great. It's not going to be you get intros this month from it. But you've got to consider the context. So if they're in the car you have a limited time to catch their attention, therefore you need big font, and you have limited time to quote unquote brand. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time branding, although it'd be nice if they kind of saw me everywhere, right? And I'll see schools that they have, you know, their logo is a dragon clutching a earth, and they have in its other talon, they have 3 swords, and then they have the name of the school. All of that kind of logo stuff goes out the window on this kind of stuff. You know, that's why you see there, Alan has the Mile High Karate logo. I just had the logo that we use that people recognize was name of the school, and then I could put it everywhere, and they would see it in all places, right? So mostly when it's going to be in the car, you mostly aren't going to drive them to a website. You're mostly not going to drive them to anything but a phone number, or, and I'm not, you know, making any moral judgments. One of the most effective billboards I've seen from a client was the Long Island Expressway in New York, obviously massive traffic. And it was text this to, you know, text karate to 322 for your free, you know, whatever. So texting to receive information, even when they're in the car and they shouldn't be touching their phone, and they, you know, that does work, right?
And
What I do,
I mean, you put them at intersections. You don't put them in the middle of the road, you know, coming down an intersection. They're all at intersections, and you can do them at every intersection, all 4 corners. And so that's why you need a couple hundred of those out. But it's easy, you know, you can put 100 out in 2 hours.
right. And most of us are in a situation where people are starting to get out of their house and they're driving around, or at least going down to the Chick-fil-A drive-thru or whatever. So it is a good time to start getting a bunch of that stuff out. And for the retail merchants that are open, it's a good time to start getting rack cards out. So all of that type of stuff. It's always, during this whole thing, been a good time to have Pizza Hut and Domino's putting flyers on their pizza boxes and stuff, or having McDonald's put, you know, advertising in the bags as they go through. So all of that stuff works. What was your other question?
I was gonna say it's even better with the rack cards now because people are standing in line longer and they're more distanced apart.
My other
It's
question,
about leadership.
sure, yeah,
Go
my other
ahead.
question, leadership. Yeah, what do I need it for? You know, I don't offer a leadership program. What could I, you know, offer that?
Let me give you a short answer. And
Yeah, I know it's not that small.
well, no, I'm going to give you the short answer. As a new Quick Start member, priority 1 is get your pricing straight. Priority 2 is get a really high closing rate for intros. Then priority 3 is to fire hose and flood yourself with a ton of intro traffic, right? Now, I don't start with priority 3 of drinking from a fire hose until we've got the intro enrollment process really tight, and, you know, you're charging a reasonable tuition. What I would consider a reasonable tuition, $297 a month on a 12-month enrollment with $400 initially. So the presentation is normally $800 to register. Since you came in from blank, we give you a $400 discount, so it's just $400 in the first month. So they're paying $697 initially, $297 a month. I'll freely admit that it takes a long time to get new members to get their mind around that level of pricing for a new enrollment.
To grow a pair.
Yeah.
To grow a pair, yes, yes. But I want to have pricing, intro conversion rate, and then drink from a fire hose. The reason I'm answering this question this way is the absolute best way to suck up a massive amount of cash and anchor your students in tightly for the long term, and I'm not talking about contractually, I'm talking about mentally, is to launch a renewal program, put them all into leadership, and usually you can do like 75%. The thing that we discovered, and we discovered it several years ago, is we were making a mistake, because we would start talking about leadership program. New members would spend like a year stressing about what should be in their leadership program. and wouldn't fix their pricing, fix their intro ratio, and then flood themselves with new students. And so therefore would get completely derailed on like priority number 9 rather than prioritize number 1, 2, and 3.
Gotta
Right?
add 100 students.
Yeah. So mission number 1, especially in this environment, is for everybody on the meeting to go bring in 100 new students and do it in 6 weeks. And the environment is completely perfect and primed for it. You know, from the standpoint of the COVID crap, right? If you have the most moronic governor, if you're in Michigan and your governor is saying, we'll arrest anybody who leaves your house, right? If you're in the worst spot possible, what we know is that the marketing is really fruitful because there's a ton of stuff that's working really well because people are staring at their computer screen, they're reading their email, and they're on Facebook, and that other places that can co-promote for us are open to it right now. If you're reopened, what we know is there's huge, massive, incredible, unbelievable pent-up demand of people who are saying, fuck this, let's get out and get over this stuff and get out there, right? So in both cases, pardon my language, there is massive opportunity, right? So right now, everyone needs to add 100 people. Now, I'll give you a little bit more complete answer on that. Is the first mission, once we start really focusing on renewals, is to get the student to really set a goal, be committed to train to black belt and beyond, and really think about and visualize, here's what I'm going to accomplish by the time I get my black belt. The parents, here's what my child is going to achieve. He's going to be an honor roll student. He's going to get a scholarship to Harvard, or he's going to go to West Point. You really want to get that, what the NLP guys call future pacing. You really want to get that anchored into their mind, right? And then you want them really emotionally committed that come hell or high water, they're going to get to their black belt. Once you really accomplish that through the first 6 weeks, then it's about having a renewal option that is the higher level one, and then having a fallback position. And what I will tell you is that, unlike what most people think, if you have the expensive option and the less expensive option, everybody wants the expensive option if they can afford it, right? So we'll find, like for our mile high schools, they'll be at 90% of people are going into the high level program. And most people intuitively think it's the opposite. I can get to my black belt through the black belt program, and it's half of what the leadership program is. Well, of course, they're all going to do black belt, and then nobody's going to want this. Works the opposite. They all want to do the most expensive thing. And the reason they have a fallback, in fact,
They want to do the best thing,
Yeah.
and that's best.
exactly. The mistake that we find our more advanced members making is they say, well, I was getting everybody in leadership, so I got rid of the fallback. That's a mistake too, because what it means is they weren't charging enough for leadership. They need to push the price point up, okay? Now, from a pricing standpoint, what I said is I'd like to have everybody be at like $297 a month for a new enrollment. We want the leadership program to be double that or more, okay? And then we want to have a fallback position that's a 50% bump or less, right? The reason I say 50% bump or less is I really don't want to price anybody who can afford, say, $297. I don't want to price them out of not being able to train to black belt. My role isn't to push people out of the program, but what I do want to do is recognize that if they're willing to pay $247 on the way in the door, they're going to be willing to pay $497 for leadership or more. So pricing wise, that's what we want to be able to do. From a standpoint of deliverable, what I would recommend you do, and I recommend everybody do, I think automatically we're mailing this out to everybody. We should be. If you go to milehighblackbelt.com and you look at week 5, there's basically an infomercial for the and it's the sale is me just talking to the camera. Underneath it, there's a sheet that says Q&A with Master Oliver about black belt. The Q&A sheet is I started with an outline, I talked it to the camera, and then we transcribed what I said to the camera. And in other words, I never worked from a script, right? I just knew, here's my goal, is to sell them on that they want this leadership program. And here's the outline of things I got to make sure I cover. So all the language about what it is really what you need to know is, and by the way, I stole this from 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Steve Covey. Steve Covey talks about he calls it the maturity continuum. Habit 1, 2, 3 moves you from being dependent to independent. Habits 4, 5, 6 moves you from being independent to interdependent. And then the 7th habit is sharpen the saw, or renew and rejuvenate, right? So I figured that instead of going from being dependent to independent to interdependent, I had you move from learning how to be a really good student and then learning how to be a really good self-starter. In other words, dependent to independent. And then moving from being a good team leader to, in a small group setting, being a good team leader in a large group setting. In other words, moving from being independent to interdependent, right? But being interdependent in a way that you're in a leadership role, not in a follower role, right? So you'll hear me say, we can take people through 4 steps on the way to black belt. Everybody learns how to be a really good student and learns how to be an independent self-starter. In other words, gets an A because they want to be a good student. You know, doesn't do drugs.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Doesn't do drugs other than they're worried about getting caught, right? We can also take people through the next step of learning small group leadership, public speaking, high-level leadership skills, even at 7 years old, the way to black belt. That's what our leadership program is doing, is teaching them to be, independent, a good student, a good independent self-starter. Then is teaching them, and then through our leadership program, teaching them how to be a small group leader, a bigger group leader, public speaker, which of course is the primary attribute of them being able to go to the college that they want to do, or have success in school. So that may be a different answer than you were looking for, but most of what leadership is about is not about teaching them some new cool technique. We do some of that stuff, but mostly it's about a higher level that teaches them true leadership skills on the way. Okay?
Yep.
Is that a good answer?
Perfect.
And let me give him 2 more quick things for that, Master Oliver.
Yeah.
When you're putting them on leadership, number 1, you have to pre-frame them anyway. It's not something you can go renew people if you haven't been pre-framing them. Jimmy Grassler knows what I'm talking about the pre-framing, because when you pre-frame them, the renewal is easy. And leadership is nothing more the continuation. You have a leadership program now. It's to your higher levels of black belt. And that's what they're paying for, to get these character development, to get these advanced techniques that are going to get them to black belt and beyond. And that's what your leadership is. And all you have to do in the basic program is get them to buy into that you're a black belt school. And if you're a black belt school and you train like a black belt, if you want to be a black belt, and if you want to be a black belt, you got to set a goal. And a black belt is a white belt who never quits, blah, blah, blah. Every class, they have to be beat with that. Jimmy, what was you had that kind of same resistance in the beginning until you got them pre-framed. Give Renato a little insight there.
Same resistance. Well, I took your cues. Selling from the floor and constantly reinforcing those sorts of things. There's always constant reminders about, we've got our first level. This is basic training, and then we take students just like you and we turn them into black belts, and we're looking for people who have these particular qualities. Some of you have them. And we just like you say, we constantly are trying to set the mindset for them being a black belt.
How much easier was it to renew them when you had them pre-framed?
Well, it's a lot easier, and there's quite a few steps that you've given us with those visualization sheets, having them imagine themselves becoming a black belt from a very like a starter position, white belt and yellow belt, they have to start thinking, okay, I can be a black. They don't come into the school thinking they can be a black belt. They don't, and their parents probably don't even think that either. But constantly reinforcing that idea into their head, little kind of a programming, really helps it. It makes it much easier.
Yeah,
And gets
And now,
Like
Hanato,
pre-framing.
and now, Hanato, forget all of that. One, pricing, two, high conversion ratios, and three, 100 new students in the door. Okay, so forget all of that, because do not get fixated and distracted on that until, and that's why we do like level 1, level 2, level 3. We do quick start is let's figure out how to open the spigot and feed as many new students as you want anytime you want it. And it's no exaggeration. And this has been unique times, but still in unique times, is we can teach you how to open the faucet at any time and feed as much, if not more, intro traffic than you've ever seen in your life, more intro traffic than you can handle into the school. But until you've mastered that, let's not get bogged down into all that other stuff. That's what we really do up in level 1, level 2, at the higher level with our members, right? Is really our sequence is pricing, conversion rates, flood of people, drinking from the fire hose. Then it's mastering that, is moving into mastery leadership. Then it's mastering the renewal prep process, the leadership at double the tuition and high conversion rate there. Then it's mastering staff recruitment, training, hiring, motivation, so that all that stuff happens through other people, not that it has to happen to yourself, right? So fixate on every night, every morning, before you go to sleep, get the legal pad out before you wake up when you wake up in the morning, not before you wake up in the morning. As soon as you wake up in the morning, go someplace where nobody's going to bother you, take the legal pad and say, what more can I do today to feed new traffic in? Because until you master more traffic than you can ever handle, is that other stuff is kind of irrelevant. We see some members who, they forget that lesson. And then what they do is, oh my God, we renewed 100% of the new people. What do we do now? Well, you bring in another 20 people this month and you renew them. Then you bring in another 20 people next month and you renew them. I mean, that's the cycle. But if you don't have constant new flow, you've got nothing to really work on, if that makes sense. So,
Yes, thank you.
Bob, you're very welcome. Bob, we had 2 or 3 more questions, and as usual, there's no way to answer a question quickly among the 3 of us here.
Yeah, it was, there was Alexia, she was asking, but you covered it pretty well. And I'm going to try to, as Master Moody suggested, pull that segment from today's meeting and add it to the stat sheet. Her questions were on the stat sheet, but I think you went over that pretty thorough. I mean, to the extent that I think I need to pull that clip from today's meeting and add it to that stat sheet segment.
Yeah, and maybe we could fix the stat sheet as well.
It is editable, so it's not a problem. Anybody can convert it to however they want. It is an editable version.
Yeah, there was a couple other questions in the Facebook group. I will try to get to them. One of them, now I opened it, I can't see who posted. Stephen Del Castillo. Stephen, are you still on the meeting?
Him and Barb, yes, sir.
Okay.
Steve.
Okay. There you are. Before we do that, let me remind everybody, next Wednesday, Amanda has generously been volunteered to do a session at noon Eastern on doing enrollments virtually on Zoom rather than in person. And then next Friday, Rachel has generously been volunteered to doing renewals in the age of virtual. But on this piece that you were looking at, and I'm just glancing at it for the first time, so I'll freely admit I haven't had a chance to really evaluate. But rule number 1 when you're doing any ad is there always needs to be a headline, which think of the headline as being an ad for the ad. And I don't care whether it's a 30-second spot, it's an infomercial, it's a postcard, it's a letter that's being mailed out, whatever it is, you always want to have a headline, like in a magazine or a newspaper newspaper ad. And sometimes that headline is what we would call a grabber, a fake $1 million bill, a dollar bill at the top, and then the first line refers to why it's there. Other times it's a benefit statement or it's something, but if you don't have that to draw them into the rest of the ad, is you get limited readership, right? The most important component on any ad is the headline to get them to read it and the offer to get them to take action, right? So always think in terms of anything you do, and if it's first most important thing is who sees it, right? If I mail this piece out to a retirement home, doesn't matter how good it is. Maybe one of them has a grandkid, right? But I mean, generally doesn't do anything.
He said he wanted to mail it to his prospect list. It was a letter he wanted to put together.
No, I understand. I understand, and he's right here. So, but the first thing is your school name and your school logo is never the headline. That's what you have here, right? That should go bottom right, not top left. It could go bottom left, but it goes down on the bottom. It doesn't go at the top, right? Nobody's going to read anything because it came from KMMA. And in fact, I don't know, and they don't know what KMMA is, right? So what you want to do is you always want to have that down, where the offer is, not up at the top trying to suck them into reading it, right? Maybe you can help me out. What is the offer?
Already listening to you, I think I probably put too much in the I put like 2 or 3 different bullets of things I could do, and then maybe that's part of the problem as well, in addition to what you've said.
Oh, okay. Well, you've got a free 2-week trial of our program.
Yes, sir.
And then you do a summer camp, and then you've got, oh, by the way, I'm giving away birthday parties. Yeah, you'd be better off to pick something, right? Let's say,
And do 3 mailings, 3 different ones.
yeah, you certainly could do that. I will go through and put more.
Mail is so inexpensive. It's you can hit those quite frequently.
Well, what's inexpensive?
The direct mail, your prospect list.
Right.
I don't know. We're getting ready to dump $14,000 in direct mail. I wouldn't say it's in cheap. But,
You want to be.
I won't be doing that.
I think he has a larger. I think you have a larger list than he's mailing to.
Well, not necessarily, but that's for 16,000 pieces, dropping 3 times.
His was a prospect, former prospects. Is that right, Steve?
Yeah, yes, sir. Actually, all this particular piece was going to be was I was going to get my girl, my front desk, just dropping like 30 or 40 a night in the mail, right? Like just picking outgoing calls and dropping them in the mail.
Let me inexpensive.
Well, it's not per piece. It's inexpensive because it's only 30. I would suggest first. How big a prospect list do you have?
It's like 2,500, sir.
Okay. Yeah, instead of doing 30 a night, one is you don't have to have anybody who works for you touch this stuff, right? Because one app that I like or one supplier is Amazing Mail. There's also Send Out Cards. There's a number of others where they can do short run, small numbers of people. Bob, are you still here with us? Where's Bob?
Yes, sir.
Bob.
I'm here.
Bob, could you do me a favor?
Sure.
Is reach out to Steve Semi, and Scott's here with us. Find a time early next week that I could follow up with both of them. Steve, I thought was going to stay on our meeting today, but he didn't make it to the meeting. So maybe you can set a time for both of those, preferably a time with Steve, with myself and Master Smith for early next week. Steve,
Okay.
Steve was just calling me, but I thought he was going to be here on the meeting. And Scott, maybe you can give Bob a call and he can set a time early next week. But let's stay on this, Steve. Were you going to do this as an envelope piece or were you going to do it as a postcard?
This one was an envelope piece, sir.
Okay. It's absolutely true that a personal letter in a hand-addressed envelope with a live stamp is generally going to get much better results, right? On the flip side of it is you can get super quick throughput, very inexpensive, much less expensive than the hourly rate of the gal who's going to be doing this by doing full color postcard or pretend handwritten. Send out cards can do pretend handwritten pretty well. Also a supplier that I use a lot by the name of Handy Mail, they can do pretend handwritten in a run up to like 2,500 pieces, right? So I'll give you more feedback on the content, but if I was going to mail something out in an enveloped mail, I would at the very least want 4 or 5 good testimonials, right? What somebody else said is much more powerful than what you say. And I wouldn't want to bury the offer too deeply into the content, right? I'd want that to be like, you can't miss it. So one example might be something I did for years is they come in for the second intro, they do the enrollment conference and they say, we can't enroll right now because doesn't matter what the because is. We would always send them like a 6-week $99 offer right behind that, right? A week or two, but pretty quickly. Now, we never buried the lead on that, right? You know, the headline could be something like, you know, we were so happy to have you in and we really enjoyed having you. We wanted to give you this, offer that you can't refuse to just try a little bit more and see what you think. And then it would be, half price, as you know, this, 66% off, 70% off, only for you because you've already come in, and we'd just like to have you learn a little bit more before you make a definite decision. So some kind of offer like that, right? On a personal letter, make it really a personal letter, right? So one way to do that is, if you were going to do 30 at a time, is you can take a legal pad, you can handwrite it in a Flair or in a Sharpie. Then you can make a jillion color copies if you want, but then you can use that same pen to personalize their name. So as long as you got somebody doing it by hand anyway, they might as well write in Dear Billy and then have a pretend handwritten letter that could be put out in small quantities with a handwritten address and stamp. Does that make sense? I always use that for renewal letters, by the way. You could do that 5 pages if you want, but you can take a legal pad, print it to black and white, use the same pen to put their name in, or you can print it to full color, obviously more expensive. But if you just print it to black and white and then you put their name on it with a Sharpie or a black felt tip pen, it looks like you hand wrote the whole thing.
You print it black and white on yellow paper or something that looks like it was just torn off a sheet. It doesn't look like normal paper, then it looks like
a legal pad.
Yeah, that's right. You could run it through with yellow paper so it looks like a legal pad. And then what you can do is you can make it very personal, right? So instead of it looking like an ad, as long as you're going the effort of a stamp and handwritten, when they open it up, it looks like a personal letter. Think about you're writing grandma, you're writing your grandkids or whatever, rather than you're just something that's generic that goes out, right?
Yes, sir.
So that's not comprehensive, but it gives you a good start.
Yes, sir.
Right. One of the things you should do, though, if you have a good list of 2,500 prospects, is really what I would want to do is be mailing to all 2,500 a couple times a month, right? When things normalize, you're inviting them to Ninja Night, you're inviting them to movie night, you're inviting them to the buddy day, all that kind of stuff that you do. Right now, you can be
camp and etc.
Yeah. But anything that you do as a referral event, that's one way to do volume, is you invite them to anything like that, right? Another way is you invite them to all your belt testings and graduations, black belt shows and so forth. Invite them, you can even print up a ticket, invite them to come to intramural tournaments, all that kind of thing, right? In today's day and age with Zoom, you can invite them to a free, we can make up something, but, invite them to a free 4-day intensive online course or whatever it might be. All that kind of stuff works really well. I'll give you some more feedback on here, but that's a pretty good primer on direct mail to begin with.
Very good. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. I'll leave it with this is, one of the best copywriters who ever lived, his name is Gary Halbert. And he talked about A pile, B pile mail. What he meant by A pile is it's a personal note from grandma. And what he meant by B pile is it's obviously recognizable as commercial mail, right? Think of bills and all that stuff in a different category. And what his argument was, if you can make it look like A pile mail, hence the handwritten stamp, you're always much better off. The mistake that people make is I open what looks like letter from grandma, and then I open it up and I immediately see a commercial solicitation, right? If I'm going to sneak up on that way, I want to keep the illusion going as far as possible, right? But the other argument is, which is why I like color postcards, is frankly, they can't miss that it's commercial mail, but it also doesn't get thrown away with the envelope unopened, right? So things with lumpy mail, in other words, there's some little, plastic race car in there or something that, you probably get the people who solicit we'll print pins for you, right? Everybody opens that, even if you know what it is, because like, oh, there's something in there. Let me see what's in there, right? So that can get them right. So that can get them to open the letter, or pretending to be, A pile mail. But the other thing is like big full color postcards and stuff like the mailer that I'm getting ready to mail. It's a big, it's just like this. So it's a big oversized fold, double-sided. The list we're doing is 16,500 times 3, but you could do 2,500 just as easily, right? So 16,000 times 3 through handy mail for that in full color is about $14,000. But that's 45, almost 50,000 pieces. So you can extrapolate. And there's method to the madness there. I'm doing 3 steps, and I always do at least 3 steps. So I'm doing hit them, week or two later, hit them again, week or two later, hit them again. And in that example, that's a bulk mail going out rather than it's first class. But you can do sneak up pretend bulk mail because they have bulk mail stamps. So a supplier like Handy Mail can do what looks like a first class stamp that's really a bulk mail stamp. And they can do pretend handwritten. And in fact, they can do pretend handwritten just as good as like the politicians have those signing machines for the whole letter.
Yeah, Master Oliver, it's important to do those sequential mailings, piece, in quick frequency like that. Even the mailing houses will probably go, oh, well, you could do it 1 a month and that'll save your budget. And they'll have a longer expiration date to improve your shelf life. It's bullshit. What he just said is exactly right, because it multiplies its effectiveness. But we've taken a long time in this course. This is a really good course in direct mail that he just said. This is good to record, and everybody hopefully took notes. I noticed some people dropped out and they missed out on a lot. This is a really good summary of direct mail you guys should take notes on for whenever you're going to implement this.
Yeah, it used to be a lot of suppliers would say, we'll only print in lots of, say, 5,000. But what I would force them to do is, let's do 6,000, but we're going to mail it 3 times the same list. So you're going to print 6,000 the same thing, but we're going to mail it 2 weeks later. We're going to mail it 2 weeks later or 1 week, but we'd hit back to back to back. That's always more effective than just one drop. Sound good? Okay, so everybody remember next Wednesday and next Friday at noon Eastern, 10 Mountain. Wednesday is going to be with Amanda Olson, and Friday is going to be Rachel, and perhaps with Jan. I don't know what it is. The women are kicking the guys' asses, so that's good work on that.
June 3rd, Wednesday, June 5th, Friday.
Excellent.
Both at noon.
Fantastic.
No, I'm sorry, both noon Eastern.
Yeah. Okay. Master Moody, Smith, Mr. Dunn, are you guys free for a minute or back?
Yep.
back?
Minutes here.
Why don't we stay for 2 or 3 minutes and everybody else, have a great day.